There's so many rewarding experiences when you help a family get a property that they love and their children are happy, or you help an elderly person transition out of their home that they've lived in for 30, 40, 50 years into either assisted living or with a family member. I mean, there's so many rewarding experiences, and I just love helping people, and I love meeting people, and I mean, it does more for me than sometimes I think it does for them.
Welcome back to the Real Estate Excellence Podcast, the show that brings you inside the minds of Northeast Florida's most driven, most consistent, and most client-focused professionals in the real estate game. Today's guest, proof that discipline, loyalty, and lifelong learning will take you far in the business. She's a Jacksonville native who remembers where her coastal hometown was still a quiet surf town. And now she's selling the beachside lifestyle to new generations of buyers and investors who want in on the Florida dream. After a career in IT sales, she made a leap into real estate nearly 20 years ago, raising 3 children as a single mom while building a business rooted in honesty, service, and grit. Whether helping a growing family upsize or guiding a seller through the next chapter of their life, she treats every deal as personal. And that's why so many of her clients become lifelong friends. A Chairman Circle Gold producer, she's backed by one of the most respected brands in the country and still believes that sharpening the sword, constantly attending trainings, engaging with her community, and representing the beaches with pride. Active in the Beaches Town Center Merchants Association and her church of 1122. She's not just a real estate agent, she's a leader, a local, and a rock for those she serves. Let's welcome to the round table Beverly Hecht of Berkshire, Hathaway, HomeServices, Florida Network Realty. I always get the Florida. I don't know why they didn't change that.
Yes. And thank you for that wonderful introduction.
Yeah, well, you provided good bio, so it helped put it together, though. I'm glad you came on. Glad you made the trip over here this morning, because I think it's going to be, to share your story. And you've been through, 20 years. That puts us back to September's my 20th year anniversary being in the mortgage business. So we've been through some different markets, and to go back where I think a lot of agents out there, as we were just talking about, they've only been in the business 2, 3, 4 years, and they jumped in, and the market has changed a little bit, but the houses are still selling. Where in 2008, 7, 8, 9, things came to a halt. Mm-hmm. And so it'd be interesting how, you reflect back on that to dealing with markets that change today as we deal with. But welcome to the show. And you aren't necessarily a native, although you did grow up here, but you were born in Minnesota.
Correct.
Yeah.
Don't tell anyone that. I'm just kidding.
So parents just got relocated and brought you to Jacksonville, or what?
So my mom was actually born in Atlantic Beach. She was one of 11. And she met my dad, who was in the military, and he was stationed at Mayport Naval Base. So that's how they met. He was from Minnesota. They went back there. Once they got divorced, my mom came back here because of, we had so many family here.
Right. I'm going to have you grab that mic and just pull it towards you there a little bit. Yeah. There we go. Good.
Okay.
Yep. Perfect. I'd like to kick off a little bit, and I think it's so important because so many agents did something else. We do have some great agents that are 22, 23 years in town that I've met that are amazing, that they found real estate early. But we also have some great agents who take their experience from previous careers and then implement it in the real estate and really take off. So tell us a little bit about what you were doing, as young Beverly. She's 18 years old. At that time, what did you envision yourself doing?
I envisioned myself being either an attorney or an architect. But growing up at the beaches, the ocean is in my blood. Mm-hmm. I love where I live. Very fortunate. Jacksonville is a fintech community, and I always worked for large corporations. I started off working for Atlantic Bank, which was a privately owned local bank here. Worked at the beaches, and then I transitioned I started working for AT&T Universal Card. They were the credit card division. And started working with Enterprise Integration. So they did all the IT technology and support for Universal Card. So I started that relationship, and they offered me a job, making a lot more money. And so I said, sure. Never been in sales before, but I've always, wanted to try it.
Right.
And it was wonderful. Met a lot of great people. I'm still, I feel very fortunate that I come from a corporate background where there were methods and procedures. There were things that you followed. There was, time commitments that you made to clients to get
Right.
back with them. So I feel very fortunate that I have that background and experience.
That's interesting, because I didn't see on your LinkedIn any college noted on there.
Yes. So I got my associate's degree from Florida Community
Okay.
College. And then I was going to UNF, and I had planned to be a elementary teacher just so I could have the summers off and holidays with my children. And I thought, it's great, and I would love to teach children, but I'm going to take a huge pay cut. So when I was working at AT&T, they actually paid for me to finish my bachelor's degree with Southern Illinois University. They flew in instructors, took them. We met at the Mayport Naval Base. That's back before all the craziness to even get on the base.
Mm-hmm.
So I finished out my bachelor's degree there, and they paid for everything, which was wonderful.
Wow. Excellent.
And I missed it by about a month to actually start full ride to University of Florida in their master's program. They brought professors into Universal Card, but I was just finishing up my bachelor's, so I missed that. But otherwise,
But what an interesting time where, because I think there's still a little bit out there, but not to the level. I mean, they were hiring non-college grads and helping them get their degree and moving them through their corporation. My wife was fortunate enough when she graduated from Florida State, Altel at the time, Altel Wireless, they would pluck a handful of each class of top people, and they would move them throughout different channels of their company so that they would learn the entire company and then hopefully be future, executives eventually. And that sounds, I don't hear about that anymore. And just like you went through, where they were really giving you a lot of value by providing you a free education.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I was fortunate because I worked my way up into management, and then I started working in the HR department. So I did all the training classes for new associates. I did the new hire orientations. I did career development classes. And so that's why they paid 100%, because it was workforce education and development.
Right.
A bachelor's degree.
I think today they worry about people leaving. But again, I think that's a weakness of management too, because they have to realize, just like in real estate, and we'll talk about brokerages, if the broker isn't adding value to their agents, the agents are going to find another broker that is.
Very true.
And that's corporate America as well.
It is. So we used to, all the people that I worked with at AT&T, some of them were a little complacent because they knew that they were always going to have a job, and they had great benefits, great retirement, but then it became employability. So it's like, what do you bring to the corporation to make them want to continue to invest in you?
Right.
So, the corporate world changed a lot.
So you gestured it a moment ago, the structure, though, that you come in, you were doing your job, they were training you were going these trainings. But what is it, you think, some of the intrinsic things? Is there's some young people, and the reason why I say this, because I think we have a lot of young people who go on to college, and they don't even know what they want to major in, that's reality. I mean, they want to explore the world. It's out there. It's, the chat GPTs now, the AI. There's so many different things that they can do. I think we're actually going to go back to a period of time where we're going to see a lot more not go to college, because as an ad that I see almost every day, I think it's on Facebook or Instagram, talking about how so many of these high school students using AI to create businesses.
It's incredible. And they do it from their homes. So they don't have to go anywhere.
Yeah. And now they do lack, I think we would agree, our generation, that, and somebody said to me, it might have been my wife the other day, she said the sub 30-year-olds, when you pass them or something in the hallway, or maybe you're going out of a store or something, you hold the door open and you say thank you or whatever, they don't even look you back. No. Or you just walk, I'm a person, when you pass someone in the hallway, I make eye contact and kind of give them a nod. I may not know who they are, but I'm acknowledging they exist, right? That sub 30, I think, because of generations, a lot of them are missing that social aspect of it. Yeah.
And I don't know if you have children, but I even look at my 3 children. So my oldest daughter is a doctor. She has 2 doctorates. She's doing telemed from home, very successful. My son has an IT degree. And then my youngest daughter, who's in her late 20s, I'm having to coerce her into finish her degree at Florida. She is a nurse at Mayo, but it's like, do this, get this done. Like, why are you procrastinating?
Right.
She's like, and then she's spending all her money not in productive ways. So it's really very frustrating,
right,
because she just got off my payroll recently, and now it's like, hello.
You're not going to be 20-something for very much longer.
So, hello, you gotta step up to the plate and be a productive adult in society.
Yeah, and I think it's going to be different. I'm sure you've probably dealt with buyers now in this generation, your daughter's age, who, they're making money, so now they're looking to buy their first house, and how you're dealing with them. So since we're kind of on this topic and you've been in the business that long, I mean, you've dealt with buyers, I'm sure, who are retired, to now some of these new generations. What have you found yourself, in your corporate experience in sales, on how you work with these different clients and I think the different generation? Because, a 25-year-old in 2005 is different than a 25-year-old in 2025. You know what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I just think of a current scenario. So I'm working with this, I don't want to say older, but they just celebrated their 50th anniversary while they were here, and they own
that's maturity.
Yes.
Yeah, that's a mature person.
Yes. And so I see, just,
their 50th wedding anniversary. Okay, that puts them in their 70s,
but
right?
They don't even look that age.
Right.
And it's just so amazing how much they've accomplished, and they're so knowledgeable, and they're so, they're very responsive.
Right.
And then I see some of these younger, there are some younger, more mature adults, not like my daughter, that they're saving. That is a goal for them to, invest in real estate. Is where most people make, the most money. The biggest return on their investment is in real estate. So it's interesting because they need a lot of hand holding, but I love that. So, I mean, I feel very fortunate that I can work with people of all ages, all backgrounds, all experiences, and help them through that process. Because even this older couple that, they have a beautiful oceanfront condo in Hilton Head. They've got another condo on the Potomac River in Alexandria, Virginia, and now they're buying a condo here just to have somewhere to stay while they travel here to watch their granddaughter play soccer.
Right.
And it's amazing, but they don't understand this environment. They're like, we're used to, condos in Hilton Head, they sell in a matter of hours.
Yeah.
And they're like, why is this condo here on the market for 30 or 60 days? So helping them through that process. And then, it's a totally kind of different environment. And Jacksonville is so large, and it's hard for people to understand. They wanted to go all over to kind of explore, where's the best place to buy?
Yeah.
And, you try to give them as much information as possible to help them make an informed decision.
We're in a very unique, I think every place has its uniqueness, right? I grew up on Cape Cod. That's unique. That's kind of like Hilton Head, sort of, not really, because it's a very small community. Everyone knows each other. Jacksonville, although a lot of people do know each other, especially if you're actively out like we are doing business and you're interacting, you get to know a lot of people. But the uniqueness about the geography of our area. There's, the schools in Duval versus schools in St. John's or Nassau or Clay, that type of thing. Do you want to be near the water? Or, there's, great properties on the river. Will you, hey, the ocean's too expensive. Maybe the river's your option. If you are active, which this is, I think our geography provides a community for active people, whether it's, running and hiking trails, whether you like to go canoeing, whether you're a boater or fisherman, and there's all those types of stuff that you can do, an endless list here. I think the only difference, because I did grow up, I spent about almost a decade in Northern Virginia. Obviously, there's a lot of historic stuff there. We have a lot of history here, but not like Virginia does. But we have great places to go boating. That's what we like to do. We boat on the river. We go tubing. We go to St. Augustine because we like to go out and put the boat on the beach and that kind of thing. But that person coming down from Minnesota doesn't understand that geography and so forth. What are some of the things that you do to try to draw that out of them? Because I think it's very important to understand, what are their needs and desires and those kinds of things outside of the home.
Absolutely. So I work on our relocation team. And one of the things I always offer to people that are relocating, I ask them, what are your priorities? Do you want to be within a certain distance to your place of employment? Is that important to you? Or do you work from home? And I also take them on tours, because I actually work in Nassau County, Duval Clay, St. John's, and Flagler. So I go from Amelia Island, Yulee, which a lot of people that relocated with Amazon, they wanted to be in Yulee because all the schools are rated A's. And it's a 20-minute drive. And then you've got River City, the area for shopping, and then the whole Fernandina, Yulee, Amelia Island area for the beaches. There's so much to do. So I take them on tours, because it's overwhelming to them, and they're not sure where they want to be. But I've had people that the husband relocated here to work for Walmart off Phillips Highway, and their children only wanted to go to Fernandina Beach High. So yes, so it's about a 45.
How'd they know anything? Do they have cousins or something over there?
Because they played baseball, and so they made some connections with that whole group of community. Mm-hmm. And so he was willing to drive 45 minutes each way just so his kids could go to the school that they chose to go to. So it is interesting. You really do have to drill down and ask them a lot of questions, because it is overwhelming for them. But when I do the tours, and I will show them houses, or I'll show them, what's available, because, Jacksonville is so large, over 800 square miles. So it's hard. It's hard for them to, but sometimes it's driven by the schools. And even if they don't have school-age children, or they don't plan to have children, I still tell them that from a resale perspective, you're going to have a larger target audience for your home if you're in a good school zone.
Yeah.
So, it's all the different things to take into consideration. But some people do. They want to be by the water. They want to be by racquetball. They want to be by golfing communities. I've got a gentleman right now that he just wants to buy a second home, but he wants me to look at like 12 different golfing communities, find out if they have a heated pool in their amenity center, find out if they have clay courts or if they have hard courts. So there's a lot of other things that they're taking into consideration.
Yeah.
So it gets pretty intense. You got to have some spreadsheets.
Yeah. It's like that's going to cost extra.
And
Well, what's
I have
interesting?
a hard time saying no.
What's very interesting about that, what you're talking about, this particular person, hey, doesn't want clay courts or the pool's heated, the amenity center, and so forth. I was just on a phone call yesterday. Actually, a high school classmate of mine who has been doing websites for agents for as long as you and I have been in the business. He's got a huge client base. And we were talking with another gentleman who I've had on the show who's doing an AI home search. And part of the deepness, and this is where people think, oh, yeah, Zillow's going to have AI. And it takes a lot more, because this is the type of stuff they want to be able to go online, go into ChatGPT and said, hey, find me a community in Jacksonville in this area that has, I like to play on clay tennis courts. It's got a heated pool, right? And is less than 5-minute ride to the beach or something like that. That's the type of information they're trying to raise the AI home search to. And it's not as easy, because obviously where is that information at? It's got to go on, and if it's not really mentioned or put out there, maybe there's only one website that ever says anything about that community having clay tennis courts, so that's where it's coming to. And to help out, hopefully in 2 to 3 years, he's going to be doing that. So, give me just a second.
Yes.
Clay tennis courts, heated pool, boom, 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 and you have 2 or 3 communities that might pop up. Yeah, that's some crazy stuff there. I'm going to try to bring back the question I had before I made that statement. When working with the buyers coming from out of town, have you done any things that were sight unseen? Because we mentioned military relocation. Sometimes these people can't get here all the time to come see houses.
Well, normally I'll do a FaceTime video.
Yeah.
So I do that a lot. And I have a gentleman right now in the military, and he's in California. So I've done numerous. He wants to be in this little small segment of Jacksonville Beach where he's lived before, apparently years ago. But then he's also worried because he would like to be as close to the ocean as he can. So
Right.
I've shown him several oceanfront condos via FaceTime. And then, with all the SIRS and everything else that's going on, also want to know, are there going to be any special assessments? So trying to drill down and get those reports and get communication. And a lot of times they don't know if there's going to be special assessments. They know that there may be one, but they have no idea how much that may be. So there's a lot of...
He's looking at condos, or he's... When you say special assessments, you're talking about just regular community fees.
Well, when they go through those reports to verify the structural integrity of the particular condo building.
Right.
So they have to determine what do we have to do to bring it up to, code. And then, are we going to have to give a special assessment to our current homeowners in order to accommodate that because they don't have the financial.
Because my wife and I own half a dozen condos ourselves, and we do, help other, she helps other people find people to rent their units. And I don't understand why they went 3 floors. We're not 5 to 10. Okay, now we're looking into, that kind of structural thing going on. But I think one of the problems, and I really wish they would push this through, I know they tried to ease off a little bit on some of the regulations recently because condos took a, kind of a bath. But I think we're still looking at like some crazy amount of inventory of condos for sale. But why they started requiring that for 3, your standard 3-floor condo, to me, I think was a bad move. If they went to 4 floors, they would probably take half the condo inventory off the.
Very true.
Yeah, but brings up obviously the insurance. What have you recently? I think probably the last 18, 24 months, when working with clients as far as insurance. I have my belief, and I talked about it on the show many times. But how are you handling that? Because that's become an affordability issue.
Very, very true. Because I've sold several condos in Sea Place and Atlantic Beach. And, so every condo association's gone through these massive increases in insurance. And, I mean, some of it, like you said, it does make it cost prohibitive for a lot of buyers that they could afford the condo. But then when you look at the $1,000 or $1,200, $1,500 a month condo fees, they're like, I can't do it. So it is very difficult. I have several.
Well, I was talking more just your regular homeowner's insurance. Even on the single-family homes, it's gotten crazy. Now, the whole thing, I think what really throws a lot of homeowners off, too, is like, oh, the roof is 10 years old. Well, someone moving from up north, they probably never have replaced their roof, unless a tree fell on it. And to come down here, and now the roof is 10 years, 11 years old, so now there's only these amount of insurance companies that will do a policy on it because it's more than 10 years. And how that kind of throws them off.
Well, and I speak from personal experience just recently. So I have a brand new roof. It's a year old. I have a brand new water heater. It's not even 6 months old. And my HVAC is 6 months old. And I just got notification that my insurance is going to double. And I had 2 4-point inspections done. And I had to...
How long you been in the home?
27 years.
27 years. Mm-hmm. And this is the information that's out there right now. People don't realize they know how old your water heater is because they got to go by and get a little permit from the county, and that's public record, and they have access to that.
Well, and I did a 4-point with house scan and paid for it myself. That wasn't good enough. They had to come out and inspect my property as well. And they looked at like the connectors for my washer and dryer, and one had a little bit of rust or corrosion on it. I had to replace all that. And then, some of my pavers were separating. I had to redo all those. And I mean, it's getting pretty intense.
Wow. Who's your insurance company?
Should I say?
That's the thing I think that's gotten, Florida's known for a high level of fraud. And then the statistic is out there. We have more legal cases having to do with insurance than like the rest of the 49 states combined. So they're working on that in Tallahassee to kind of rectify that. But that's put a lot of, obviously, pressure on the insurance companies to come up with like crap like that. Excuse me. I mean,
well, and I think we're negatively impacted by things that go on in South Florida, of course. And then I even look at areas like Villano. So why do they allow these properties to be rebuilt on dirt that has already
been washed away once?
Washed away, or twice. So why don't they?
Well, I assume a lot of them are self-insured. Someone's paid cash. So there's no mortgage company saying, hey, we need an insurance policy on that property.
So you're going to build a $2 million house on the ocean on a road that's probably going to wash into the ocean.
Very, very possibly. Statistically, it's funny because we go boating. Matter of fact, this past Sunday, got the boat at St. Augustine because we're part of the boat club. Cruise down to Matanzas. And I had a family member tell me, she probably doesn't listen to my show, but 4 or 5 years ago, I was thinking about it as I was cruising back, you're coming up the Intercoastal Waterway and you're looking at all the houses on the Intercoastal Waterway and stuff. And she goes, oh yeah, in 5 years, this will all be underwater. That was their thing. And statistically, we've been kind of blessed in this area we've never really, knock on wood, been hit directly. The Gulf Stream keeps those hurricanes kind of moving offshore, never been, truly directly hit massively by a storm here. So, or at least it's been many decades. Someone probably in history can probably come back and say, oh yeah, back in 1950 it happened. But, it's just interesting because of Florida's put themselves in this position. And I think basically the bottom line to our conversation here is legislation needs to clean it up somehow. Absolutely. Because I think there's a huge level of fraud. I know, there was a hailstorm years ago. They replaced like 70% of the houses to replace the roofs because the contract guys were going by and they were going up saying, yep, you got hail damage. And then, if the insurance company didn't just write it to say, okay, yeah, go ahead and replace the roof, everyone else got in their whatever legal battles you can force the insurance company to move forward. Well, I mean, you're looking at $30,000 roofs on average. Mm-hmm. And what are you paying for insurance for the year? How long does it take them to recover all that?
Yeah. And I see a lot of people, a lot of companies that prey on elderly, and that really bothers me. Mm-hmm. From the roofs, from the trees that, are going to do damage, in a storm. It's very sad. It does need to be regulated much more than it.
All right, I'm going to ask you something. We'll switch pace here a little bit. We'll get off the boring insurance part, but it's important. I think, now as I talk to as soon as you get somebody under contract, you need to be calling the insurance company. Because they have that information that you were talking about on your property. How old's that water heater? How old's this? And is that going to become, especially someone who's tight on their debt ratios, that could disqualify them? Because we used to just wait till the last week before closing and say, okay, we've done everything. We just need the insurance policy. Okay, make a phone call and you had it in a day, right? Now you really need to get the insurance person involved up front.
Absolutely, especially when it's an investment property and there's no seller's property disclosure. We haven't lived in the property, so we don't have to disclose anything about it.
Right.
You know what's happened.
Right. You're almost November will be 20 years in the business. What's the biggest shift you've seen in the Jacksonville Beach and St. Augustine markets since 2005?
Well, prices are just gone up exponentially. It's funny because I've always been very intrigued by real estate. So when I was in high school, way back then, the Times Union and the Beaches Leader used to publish everything about every transaction, every real estate transaction, that and then babies and then deaths. But, back then, even some of my friends, we still talk about it today. It was such a small knit community. Everyone kind of knew each other. But, I could have bought a condo back in the early 80s on the ocean for $70,000. I'm like, that's crazy.
Yeah.
That's so much money. And now I'm like, what an idiot. I should have bought 10 if I could have afforded that. But, it's gotten, a lot of areas have gotten cost prohibitive for people. If you sell at the beach, that's the sad part. A lot of my friends that live at the beach, they could sell and make a great profit. But where are you going to go?
Right.
That's going to be anywhere near the environment.
Well, especially some of the existing homes, where I'm at in St. Johns County, the square footage that I have. If I tried to, go, hey, well, I want to move closer to the beach, or hey, let me move out to, out 210 a little further to Nocatee, I would get half the house for what I have there, for what I could sell it for. I mean, and that's been a change in the market. I think, from the standpoint of a lot of buyers. I think, would you agree? For almost almost a decade, moving internally within the area was going on a lot because rates are so low. They're like, a 3, but maybe I got 3.5, but I can move closer to my friends. I like that community. There's some people are moving every 2 to 3 years, but there was a lot of more local moves. We're not really seeing that, especially because so many have it's definitely a sub 5%, if not a sub 4% interest rate right now. So that kind of local moves, I'm not going to jump on that.
Well, like my daughter, so she's under contract. We just got her under contract with the Dreamfinders home, but she had to go to St. Augustine because she had to have a 5-bedroom. So she's getting a 5-bedroom with a 1.5, 2.5, 3.5 interest rate for $527,000. She couldn't buy a small little house at the beach for that. But then I also see a lot of people are staying in place because of that. So I was showing houses in Queens Harbor on Sunday, And it's incredible how many homeowners are doubling the size of their house by adding on and totally renovating. And so they're staying in place because of those rates, or because they can't find anything that, they could sell and make a good profit on their house. But like we said, where do you go? You're going to have to go further, either out to Green Cove, Middleburg, where it's booming and there's a lot of new construction, or you're going to have to go, in small little remote areas, maybe Callahan, Yulee.
If I was pre-kids and, again, you're buying your first house, right? To go out to Green Cove, because when that expressway is put across there and it's supposed to open in 2030, and they say everything's on time right now, of course, we're 5 years out, but it's already opening up because they already have that side almost finished over there. But developers are already jumping on the land. Now, the good thing is they bought the land really cheap. If you get in there now, you can actually afford it. By the time the expressway goes in, you're going to have some decent equity.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, and I have a client right now. She owns I sold her brother's house in Middleburg, and I've got her house in Middleburg on the market because she's like, I don't want to be in this environment anymore. I'm so used to this small little quaint, kind of like we had at the beaches, small little quaint area. Everyone knows each other, and now, being invaded. And she's talking about all the roadways, all the construction with DOT, and she's like, I want to go like this little small area of St. Augustine where I can just walk to the beach and walk to some restaurants and don't have craziness. But I'm like, you're going to spend.
Well, St. Augustine Beach doesn't have any new roads going in.
No, it does not.
And you definitely have all that. The price point is a little different
Very
there,
different.
for sure. Let me get a good. Right now, obviously, we have a lot of agents. I don't know what your numbers are. If you want to share them, you're welcome to do that. The inventory is growing. What are you finding from a negotiation standpoint? What are some tactics, or some of the things maybe if other agents that are listening right now, some of the kind of the intel that you like to gather before you start negotiating, whatever it may be, whether it's a repair or a price point, initial offer. But obviously the market shifted where we had very little inventory. We were getting 10, 20 offers on the house. Now there are some houses that are still getting multiple offers, not as many, but we have twice as much, if not 3 times, the inventory that we did just 24 months ago.
Yep.
Yeah.
And I try to sell both sellers and buyers. We are now in a buyer's market. So the Redfin May 2025 report came out. We're one of 6 cities in Florida that is in a buyer's market. There's almost 15,000, and that was a couple weeks ago, homes for sale. 6,500 buyers in the market. So that is 120% difference. Huge. So it's all about.
How do they figure out how many buyers are in the market?
I'm not sure how Redfin collects that data. I'm assuming that, I don't know.
I wonder if they're picking up people clicking online or whatever, looking at homes, and they can look at the IP address and say, oh, we only have 6,500 IP addresses in here.
Yeah. Maybe they speak to mortgage.
But how many people are pre-approved right now?
Well, and submitting applications, because I do
track that
recently that applications are up, which is a good thing. But it's a buyer's market, so and I like the lady in Middleburg. So she owns her house. She also has a condo that she bought last year. Has not moved into it. She's bleeding there. I'm like, I know you don't want to sell it for less than what you paid for it, but you're continuing to pay a monthly condo fee of $1,000. So you're losing money there. Let's get these sold, both of them, so that you can buy what you want, and hopefully you can make up for some of that on the buyer side, because it is a buyer's market. So
that's a funny thing I find interesting about people when they actually look at what has gone on. They buy a house for $250,000, and and if they bought that house back in 2020. In this area, they might be able to get somewhere in the 4s for it, right? I mean, almost $200,000 in equity. Maybe it's a little bit more. That's possibly there if they're in the right area. They bought new construction when the neighborhood just broke ground. They got a good deal, got in. It's money it's not money they went and hourly worked for, right? It's money that accumulated while they were just eating and breathing and doing their daily things. And when it comes down to something like this, like you're saying, she's obviously, as a lot of sellers have, I got to get this amount of money. Even though, it's one thing if your mortgage, if you did a VA loan for 100% and you're upside down, well, you've got to get that amount of money or you're coming out of your pocket. I can understand that. But those who got unforeseen, unpredictable equity, that it's like, hey, if we drop the price 20 grand, we actually might have people come in here and look at it. They're like, no, I got to get that number. What is it in their mind? You know what I'm saying? I just always the psychology of that.
And I have a client right now. I love her to death. Love her. And it's like you said, it's in her mind. So she sees what some of her neighbors' houses have sold for, and she's like, my house is better than that. I have this, I have that. I'm like, well, but all your bedrooms are upstairs. People don't want that. You do have a beautiful home, but it should be priced at $875, and you have it over $1 million. That's why you're not getting the showings. That's why, because people are buying something very similar, and you see it as inferior to yours, but buyers are looking for square footage, amenities, and price. Everything's price driven right now because of the rates. Unless you just got that perfect house in that perfect neighborhood on the perfect lot that multiple people are going to make offers on it, and it sells under contract within a couple of days. And I've had some like that. Like I listed one in Nocatee, and it went under contract in 5 days. And some of the people within the community that were trying to buy, because they're either renters or they're going through a divorce and they have to buy another house, they're like, this is overpriced. Well, apparently it appraised, and we were going to have multiple offers, but we got one so quickly within 5 days, and it's already. Have you had sold. A low appraisal anytime recently? I have not, thank goodness. Yeah, I haven't heard any from the lending side, anything that we've had to deal with low appraisals. And, I was working actually supposed to close next week. She needed a little bit of seller concessions. The seller said, I got to get this amount of money because I think that's pretty much what they got in it. And, we bumped it up. And no problem getting the appraisal came in exactly, where we, you're not finding appraisals that are going out there saying, hey, we need $500,000. And they come in and say, oh, the house is worth $520,000. The appraisers go out there and say, they're conservative and they say, oh, the 500 is the price point. Yeah, that's the $500,000 house. You might, if $520 was the price point, they probably would have still gave you that. But they're obviously they're conservative from that standpoint because they've gotten their necks cut off too. Yeah. From that standpoint, they're under a microscope as well. And I tell people too, because I don't think they always understand that they can pay a higher price for a property if they really love it, and ask for concessions to buy down their rate, and it's much more advantageous for them in the long run to do that. And so you've got to show the numbers. You've got to give them data that they can understand and know that they're making. Let's dig in a little bit of some of the things that you're doing that has proven to your success. Imagine over 20 years, you've tweaked a lot. You're not doing the same thing you were doing in 2005, and definitely not doing the same things you were doing in 2008. For those who survived, and if we can just pinpoint that time period, what do you think? Obviously, 2005 was still, the markets were hot. Kind of, I don't know if maybe you could call it like 2020, 2021, maybe. Values were going up way too fast from that standpoint. But also, when we get that halt in 2007, 2008, 2009, it's ghost town. What are some of the things you did to survive through that period? Well, it was tough. So, being a parent or a single mom of 3 with no child support, I got 2 other jobs. So I was doing real estate nights and weekends. And Berkshire didn't really want me to do that, but out of necessity, I had to. Had to get another job where I could provide benefits, health insurance to my children. So I was working around the clock and trying to raise 3 kids and take them to 3 different places, and they were in 3 different schools. So it was tough. It was very stressful because I had always worked for large corporations and large organizations where I had medical, I had dental, I had all everything I needed and a constant paycheck. So there were many nights I didn't sleep, but I was like, okay, how do I do this? How do I make this work? And, I just struggled through it. Did you get into the short sales? Did you get into foreclosures? You dug in? Because, anyone I've had on that's been through that period of time, nobody knew really what to do. Banks had dealt with foreclosures, but not at the volume that they had. Yeah. So, and even today, some people are like, I only want to look at foreclosures. And I said, okay, fine. I've dealt with plenty of them. But in the past, people are like, I only want to see them. And, this one's been on the market for 300 days, so I think I can get a really good deal. I'm like, there's a reason it's been on the market for 300 days. Yes. There are some either major issues or so. And I still show it to them.
Yeah.
And I talk it through it with them and kind of give them
I don't
my
think
insight.
people realize the amount of money that's out there with technology now, especially. You have money coming from all over the place. It's not just local money. Investors are coming into an area, especially like ours, which I think you would agree, there's a lot of people sitting on the sidelines right now. And I truly believe that if we were doing 5.875 on a 30-year fixed right now, it would be a feeding frenzy. And it would be back to 2021. People would be like, oh my God, we got to grab it. We got to do it now, because there's just so many sitting on the sidelines because they're hearing that 6.5, 7 or more percent. And they're like, woo, we don't want to just stay away from that. But that little trigger is going to set off. Yeah. And the investors know this. And the money's coming from all over the globe. They understand, if we've got a foreclosure or, a house that's been on the market for 300 days, obviously, I guarantee a flipper's already been over there, has already checked it out and said, for the price you want, for the work that needs to be done, it ain't going to happen. Right. Yeah.
And I try to help people understand that too. I mean, our market is so vibrant, and that's why investors are coming here. They know that they can get a good return on their investment if they find the right property. And I get investors calling me every single day, and we all do.
Just looking to see what you might have coming on the market.
What do you have? I need something. I need some properties.
Right.
You and 500 other investors that want to steal something. But it's hard to work with them because I don't want them to take advantage of people. And sometimes of course that's what they're looking to do. Yeah. And my heart's not in it.
Well, I think, and I'm going to segue this into an agent, but I think new people, new investors in it. You have to kind of break down, like, okay, what is your goal? You plan to live in this house for or is this a 2-year turn and, buy another house, rent this one out, or you think you're going to get the equity in 2 years what is your goal there? And I talk to a lot of people, and what I found is you need to ask them, how long do you really see yourself in this home? Because some of these people are sitting there nickel and diming over $5,000 and they plan to live in the home for 30 years. Like, what are you worried about that for? You think this is the home for 30 years, but you're worried about $5,000?
I know, and I never try to, talk derogatory to them. But like you said, it's in the overall scheme of things, it's not that much money. Yeah. I'm not trying to, I never want anyone to think that I'm trying to make them overcommit to something that's outside of their price range or it's going to cause them stress, because you don't want that in your life. But, I try to politically correctly tell them, this is going to be $30 more in your monthly payment. Right. This is what you really want. Why are you fighting this? Right.
I imagine you've been in the business now. What are you saying to some of these people who are kind of on your buyer's list? Yeah, they want to buy, but they're like, oh, well, rates are too high and so forth. What are you saying to them to create a sense of urgency? Like, no, this is actually the time to buy. Mm-hmm. What kind of conversations are you having there?
Well, I do have the conversation about, instead of worrying about the price that you pay, ask the seller for concessions to buy down your rate. And what most people are thinking right now is in 2 or 3 years, I'll refi, or even in a year, depending on what
the savvy ones. Right. Yeah.
So if this is the home you really want and you love it and it checks most of your boxes, and I explain also to people that whether you build or you buy existing, you're probably going to get about 80 to 85% of what you really want. I've never seen anyone get 100% of what they're looking for.
Yeah.
It just doesn't happen. But if this is the area you want and you love it, or if it's close to family or friends or whatever, what's another $20 or $30 a month? Don't go to Starbucks one day.
Yeah, really, exactly. Then we cut the Starbucks out. Yeah. But I think the really good savvy agents and can get in there and kind of create that rationale with them, because I don't think people realize, you and I realize it. Right now it's a buyer's market, so they can negotiate whatever the price, some pay for closing costs, whatever. They can negotiate dollars, and if the rates do drop, that price of that negotiation is going to go away, because the demand of all those people on the sidelines, they're going to have other offers. Yep. And if you're sitting around going, hey, I don't want to buy right now because the rates are high, well, wait till the price is going to be higher in a year or whenever the rates settle down a little bit.
Well, and I explain to people too, you're not going to get the perfect storm. You're not going to get low rates and
low priced home,
prices, like,
which is the
there's a
home you want.
correlation. So you got to decide what's your priority. What are you willing to do?
Yeah.
And if you really, like, I had one client. It was funny because it was an Akati home, and the wife loved it. She only got to see it via FaceTime. The husband was there, and we got into a multiple offer situation in a matter of a day. And I said, well, this is what so I advised him what he needed to do. We did an escalation clause. We didn't, sometimes if you really, really want it and you've got good money down, then, maybe you waive the appraisal. Maybe you waive some things. Maybe you, make certain concessions.
Right.
But the wife said, if I lose this house over $5,000, you will never hear the end of it. And that's true. So he's like, okay.
You
so
love the wife. Very good, very good.
So, it's all about your perspective. And
yeah.
if you're going to be there for even 5 years, normally if you're there 3 to 5 years, you're going to make a good return on it.
I always said that I should have been a psychology major because you kind of have to walk. People sometimes get in this lane like, what's the rate? Okay, that's going to change. It's high right now. Whether it's 7 or 7.5, you're going to hopefully refi in the next 24 months. Hopefully that's going to happen for you. That's what everyone predicts. Now, of course, we've been predicting that for the last 2 years, because I remember not too long ago, it was almost 2 years ago, spring 2 years ago, some very influential person in the mortgage world that a lot of mortgage people pay, like it wasn't the Market Distillery, but like Market Distillery gives you information, they give the mortgage people information. And he was talking about the rates dropping in the fours, like back in the fours 2 years ago. After they it was May of 22 when they started to go up, right, very rapidly. And obviously that's never come to fruition. We haven't got back below 6 since then.
And I don't see that ever happening again.
Yeah, I think
maybe 5.
I don't.
But
Yeah,
not
5.
3 or 4.
Yeah. Well, in the first from September 2005 until basically November, December of 2008. The rates were, if you could get if you tipped 5.875, oh my God! But they're 5.875 to 7.25. That's where they were before everything. We've artificially, unfortunately, for a decade there, and got everyone trained in that low interest rate thing. Let me see what good question here ChatGPT has for us. Oh, here's because I wanted to get some tips for the agents out there that are listening. I know we're seeing in the mortgage world, loan officers fall out, go back to corporate careers or whatever. I imagine that is also happening as well. We just don't know until the renewal. They don't renew and the agents are out. But I think when 70-something% of the agents didn't even write a deal in 2024, that tells us a lot right there.
It does.
Yeah, that a lot of them have moved on, type of thing. What are some of the things you think, if you're a new agent, you don't have a 20-year book of business, but maybe you're in your first 2 or 3 years, you've done a couple dozen sales, hopefully. What are some of the things they should be doing right now?
Well, and we've talked a lot about this, that because buyers don't really want to sign that buyer rep agreement before they really know who they're going to be working with. I mean, potential buyers should be out there looking for testimonials. It should be, finding out who is having success in the market. But a lot of the newer agents want to do open houses because, like in one of the Market Distillery groups I was just in, one of the masterminds, they were saying a lot of buyers are coming and they're interviewing the agents at that point in time. And you can make a great connection. You could start, interacting with these buyers that are currently active. They want to, purchase in the near future. And you have the opportunity to make a good connection with them, provide them with, data and statistics, and be there for them without them, being forced to sign a buyer's
Do you think that buyer's agreement is actually scaring buyers away a little bit? Or maybe the person who presented to them originally?
From making a decision on who they want to work with, because they feel like they're committed. But I always tell people too, and I always have, you can sign this, but if you at some point decide that you don't want to work with me, I used to get flack for this, but whatever, but I'm not going to force anyone to work with me when they're making the, largest purchase they're ever going to make in their lifetime. So I tell them that, we will just, all you have to do is send me a communication or let me know that you have chosen to work with another realtor. I would never force you into working with me.
Everyone that I've talked to has that same attitude. When I had David Heeken on, we were talking about, he was into he called the first agreement, which was like, hey, I'm going to just go show this one house or work with you for this one weekend, as like the dating That was the dating agreement before. Every agent I've talked to kind of has that. So I'm wondering if some of these buyers are getting, the only reason they're really learning about it, because I think the majority of people weren't really paying attention. You and I are in the business, so we were paying attention to it. If they weren't looking to buy a home last year, but now they are, that news has kind of died down quite a bit. And I don't think they were paying much attention to it. So now they come in. So if someone jumps in front of them and it does a really bad job at presenting that buyer broker, scares them, then I can see them being, oh, hold on a second. I mean, we need to move around
and
here.
Buyers are now not as reluctant, I think, because they know it has to be done. I mean, I would just, if they want to see one property and they're not ready to make a commitment, then I have them sign, a non-rep agreement, because I'm super exponentially risk averse. I have had buyers tell me, I've been seeing properties and no agent has made me sign a buyer's rep. And I said, well, that will not be me. And I've had to leave properties. I mean, I had one gentleman that I showed up and he would not sign it. And I said, well, then I'm sorry, I can't show it to you.
Right.
I'm not going to risk
You've
my
got too
license,
much
my
invested in it.
reputation. Absolutely.
It would not shock me because people realize who's policing it, ourselves. And that was what I heard from some people who are not this past, because there was a big thing in Washington here recently, was the one a year ago where they're there. And literally when someone that kind of brought that up, like who's policing itself, and someone brought up, says we're policing ourselves, and a little laughter came about the room. And because they realize there's no fly on the wall that's, checking that.
Well,
you know what I'm saying?
I've heard that there are people kind of...
Now, shopping.
Yes, they are.
Yes, if they want to come
I had
into
someone do that to me one day. I was showing a property in Atlantic Beach. It was a townhome, and my buyer was with me in my car. And this other car came up as a man and wife, and they're like, hey, can I see that house real quick? And I'm like, you can, but I'm actually with a client, but you would need to, I try to explain to them, the buyer's rep, and they're like, oh, well, we don't want to do that. I'm like, well, then I'm so sorry. You're going to have to sign that for a realtor to show that to you if they are playing by the rules. And
right. You think that was a test?
Their license. It
felt like
felt
it.
like
You smelt it?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But I was like, in the past, I was like, oh, sure. And I'm like, yeah, no. Time out.
All right. So I'm working with putting all my data into ChatGPT, all the transcripts and everything. I won't get into the story that I'm howing. AI is learning. AI is learning. And don't ever believe what it's telling you. Like when it says, hey, all the data is up to date for all 269 of your episodes, and it gives you a link. You better check the link and make sure it actually is all filled out, because it's creating this huge metadata spreadsheet.
Interesting.
It was what it was. I found out it would come up and say, yes, you have everything updated from episode 1 through 269. Okay, so then I went and added something, I was cleaning it up. It wanted some transcripts from different episodes because there's stuff still missing. And it's like, you need to upload the whole spreadsheet that you worked on last week. I'm like, what are you talking about? Here, you gave me this link that said I had 1 through 269. Oh no, that only had one episode there. Yeah. So it tells me it's still working. I'm working on this for 3 days. It tells me it's actually still working on putting it together. So you really have to double check. Don't assume that it's telling you the truth. I actually told it you lied to me, right? Of course, apologizes, right? But anyway, I want to put a talk together. I want to put a book together of every one of of all the stories of everyone, because everyone comes with this, whether they're single moms, working through 2008 and having to survive, working with all those types of things. But one of the bottom line things is, I believe, I don't know if you've ever read the book Grit by Angela Duckworth, but Grit is and I had it in your intro there. I don't know if you had it in your bios, but it knows that that's what I'm thinking. So it adds grit in there, because every real estate agent has a level of grit. If you have not had sleepless nights, if you have not cried, or customers that have, whether you wanted to punch a hole in the wall after dealing with some people, we've all been knocked down, as we do in life. But real estate agents, obviously, we're focused on that. So part of the talk, and I was doing some reading on TED Talks and stuff, and it's kind of that little catch to have at the beginning. I call it the LLC. Obviously, everything for limited liability company. No, you have to love, laughter, and consistency is in my experience in life of dealing through hard situations. So the first question, the love, is very easy. Why do you love real estate?
I think I've been interested in it since, like I said, since I was 18, but it's so rewarding to me because I love meeting people. I love, getting to know them, and, they become my friends, and we're on social media, and I get to watch their families grow up, and I get to, like I had on the way here this morning, I had a client say, "How are you doing? I miss you. And I just want you to know that I love my house so much." And she said, "Can we have lunch sometime? Because I'd really like to see you again. I've missed you." So it's like,
yeah.
There's so many rewarding experiences when you help a family get a property that they love and their children are happy, or you help an elderly person transition out of their home that they've lived in for 30, 40, 50 years into either assisted living or with a family member. I mean, there's so many rewarding experiences, and I just love helping people, and I love meeting people, and I mean, it does more for me than sometimes I think it does for them. Like, I just feel so good for them, and I'm so happy when they're happy.
Well, you just made me think about, we think about in life, who do we deal with that actually has and I'm going to say unbiased, because I think family members can be negative, friends can be negative, and because there's always a little level of, whether it's competition or jealousy, whatever the relationship around you. But when you go to a real estate agent or you go to a doctor, you would hope the doctor would say, "Hey, I'm having this pains or whatever. What do you suggest?" And they give you a solution and they actually fix it. Now, unfortunately, I think our medical field has gone into this whole meds thing and keep you on meds forever because that's how they get paid, right? Where the actual real estate agent has an end goal. The 30, 60, 90 days, find you a home, close, and to sit there and think that you got paid for showing houses, yeah, we'd figure out a way to show more houses. If they paid us for every house you showed, right, you would try to show them as many houses as possible. But that's your goal, is to really get into their situation, into their pains, into their needs, and then help them find a solution. And I can't think of another professional that actually has a true buy-in or true commitment to their customer. And there might be somebody might be thinking, might be listening and say, "Well, I do this kind of sales and that's the way I work." Well, then you're probably pretty good. But a good real estate agent, they're dug into this. As Patty Ketchum said, everyone wants a roof over their head. Yeah, everyone wants a roof over their head. That's exactly right. So we know the game is going to end. Whether it's 30, 60, 90, we're not in a rush. We know there's going to be an end game. Our goal is to get that high, to find them that right home, listen to them and put them in there. And then they look back and go, "Oh my God, you listened to me." Because not many people are listening to each other right now.
And that's my goal. I want them to be happy. I don't want anyone to have buyer's remorse. I don't want anyone to make a forced decision. It's not about the money to me. It never has been. And my prior broker that I've had for 15 out of the 20 years I've been here at Berkshire, he used to always say, "Beverly, you give too much of your money away." I'm like, I can't help it. It's better for me. I feel better if I can
give it away, like you do staging and stuff like that, or that you spend out of your pocket.
Some of my commission, or I'll pay for things for them, or just something to help them get the home that they really want.
Right.
So it's not about, I don't call anymore to say, "Hey, how much are you paying? How much is the seller willing to pay for?" As long as they're willing to pay something. And I've had to give up some of my commission in order to help them make the transaction come to fruition. I mean, that's what it's all about. It's not about it. It's rewarding for me to help them and to make sure that they're happy in the end.
Right. 100%. You brought up an interesting thing there before I segue into the laughter part of my LLC, because you brought it up. I want to jump on it real quick. When the buyer broker agreement basically became required last August, that was a discussion. Are we going to call the listing agent? And what is the listing agent? What are you going to say? And so everyone kind of has their little twist on how they want to handle. There's 2 or 3 different ways to handle that, wherever. Now that people have done enough transactions here, we're 10 months into this. Are people pre-calling and asking on your listing? Are you pre-calling, or are you just making the offer, asking and see what they say?
So initially I was calling. And there are still people calling me or texting me and verifying, but I don't anymore. Depending on the price point, depending on what either they've already, the seller's agent has already told me that the seller's willing to offer. I just try to do what I need to do to make it work for the buyer.
Right.
So if I know that, and there are agents that, they'll have a buyer broker sign for 3%, and then the seller's only willing to pay 2%. Well, I don't ask the buyer for that difference, but a lot of realtors do, and that's their business, and that's the way they conduct it. But
or the seller in that case, because the seller's only offering 2, the buyer's asking for 3.
Well, that's what their buyer broker said.
Right,
3, and the seller, I come find out the seller's only paying 2. A lot of agents will charge the buyer that 1% difference.
Right.
Because they committed to 3%.
Well, and I've heard situations in that too, especially right now because it is a buyer's market. So if the buyer's agent's saying, hey, my people said they're going to pay 3, you're going to pay it to close this deal. You need to go revise your listing agreement, right? Because that's what they would have to do.
Yep.
Yeah. And that's negotiable.
Everything
That's
is.
totally negotiable. But it's just interesting that, the different, now that we've gone through it enough, because I think a good portion, I can't say all, I mean, just from what I'm hearing, is a lot of the selling agents were like, hey, make an offer. And then I'll take that to them. And if they're willing to pay that because you offered, versus, taking off the price and then asking for more to the buyer's agent. What are you going to offer? And they're going to negotiate because they're going to do the calculation and see what they're going to walk away with, and that they're okay with it.
And sometimes,
just make the offer.
Like I had a scenario about 6 months ago. Actually, the woman who called me this morning to have lunch, her house, we made a really strong offer, and I've known the agent, the listing agent, seller's agent, for years. And so she knows the way I conduct my business. She knows, that I'm going to follow through. We're going to, have checks and balances. And so she called me back and she said, you wrote a great offer. And the seller wasn't originally willing to pay 3%, but they're going to definitely pay it. And we got it closed really quickly. Everything went perfectly. So a lot of times it depends on the agent too. If you know them, if you've worked with them, if you know that, they're a committed agent, they have a strong buyer, they've gone through the whole process to make sure that.
But they've done their due diligence too when they make the offer to say, that's the value of that home. I mean, we can go in $20,000 light, but they're going to take it away from somewhere else. Yeah. All right, the laughter part is a little unique. Some people get the difference. I believe we go through life. You've had some trials and tribulations, even non-real estate. We just all do. We all have done something stupid, or we've been dealt what we consider a bad card. I believe it's just he's leading us down a path to teach us something somewhere. We, whether we learn it that day or we learn it 10 years later, we learn. But we're now at the point that we laugh like you just did. When a curveball's thrown at you, a tough negotiation, or maybe you don't win a listing agreement, or the biggest fear is one of our friends or family does business with another real estate agent or another mortgage person, right? We take that, right? Take that hit. But now we laugh about it because we've been in the business long enough. Can you tell us a time when you really had, or a story that you kind of reflect back to when you are dealt a situation? So, you know what? I had this happen 5 years ago and I got through that. I'll handle this. No problem. And you kind of laugh about it and then you move on.
Trying to think one that I could tell and not,
Not exposed. You don't have to use
much,
names. You have to use names. Just kind of give us a 30,000 foot.
I don't know. I think sometimes you cry. Sometimes you laugh and you cry, but not a good one comes to mind that I've really had a lot of laughter about. Sometimes, what was a good setback? You've had to have a setback. Yeah, so
one of those deals.
A couple of months ago, I was working with a buyer buying a condo, and wow, he was a struggle. Lived in Orlando. He's buying it for his daughter, he said, but then it was really for himself, and he wasn't sure, but.
Oh, a wishy-washy one.
And trying to get data and information and documents from him. And, so you kind of start making up little stories with the lender you're working with about what we like to say, we can't say. But, yeah. Because
the smell of fraud comes up. You're like, what is this? He's not really giving me the whole story. Is you buying it for your daughter or buying it for yourself? Come on, bro.
But then there was some other weird stuff. Like, he was telling us one thing, and it wasn't really, adding up as far as his funds and how he was getting it. And then he had someone else in the back background doing some strange stuff. But we just, you kind of laugh about it and you think, this too will be over and we will get a small paycheck. And so, and hopefully we won't have to work with them again.
Yeah, I mean, everyone's has that story, the wishy-washy, because we deal from the lending side. It's like, dude, they'll go find out. So you need to tell me now and you can close on time, or they can find out later and embarrass you, how you want to do it. The C is consistency. What would you say, whether it's maybe something you're doing recently or something you've been doing for the whole 20 years, but something you do consistently today that you feel moves the needle in your business?
Well, I use AutoFlow. You've probably heard of AutoFlow and the low gifts. But one thing I try to always do is I always have like my heart's in it for the children too, because I always get them a little separate gift, something they can go to Target and buy themselves, something little for their room.
Right.
And then for the holidays, like for Easter and Halloween, I send the children like ice cream gift cards. Then for the anniversaries.
So you can go back into your past client list and you're consistently reaching. Interesting. Yeah.
And then also the anniversary month of when they bought a house, I'll send them like either a $25 gift card to Home Depot or maybe Home Goods and say, happy home anniversary, So I keep in touch with them. And like the other day, I was showing a house and 2 doors down was a client I'd sold a house to 2 years ago. So I knocked on the door. I'm like, hey, you remember me? They're like, hey, Beverly. I said, I just wanted to drop these ice cream cards off to the girls. So little things like that, just trying to keep in touch. I'll do some client appreciation events. And it's kind of hard because I'm in so many different places. I try to like move around where the location of the event is. But just trying to keep in touch with people and letting them know I still care about them. I still think about them.
Right.
Like couple months ago, there's a lady and she lives by herself, and so I just sent her a card and just said it's part of the ninja process about keeping in touch with people. And I sent her a card and said, I just really appreciate you. I've sold you 2 houses. She'll invite me over and we'll have some wine and cheese and just talk. And when she got my card, she called me and she said, you just made my day. Like, I don't get a lot of mail. And
that you thought of her.
Yep.
You took a few moments to think about it. It's interesting with the kids because the kids don't.
They love getting mail.
Well, the kids but the kids remember who gave them that, and then so we know their ears are always perked up. As much as you think they're not listening to you, they're hearing what mom and dad are talking about, and all, hey, we're going to buy another house. Or, the term real estate agent comes up, your name's going to come up because they want that next. Yeah, that's not a bad tactic right there. Yeah. That's really good. Did we miss anything? Is there anything you'd like to add?
I don't think so, but I feel very honored that I'm the
first here in this office, this new studio. Yeah. Hopefully we're in this longer than the others. We're going to do a couple of tweaks in here, but yeah, we've got some, I don't know if you know, the St. John's Business, Faith, and Family. Yeah, Business, BFF they call it. Jessica Swearingen with Ponte Vedra Realty, she's part of that, and then she has a girlfriend of hers. They do a huge group of women business owners, real estate agents, everybody. They have a huge following, but they're going to start doing their podcast in here with us. Actually, tomorrow we're going to do the first episode, so we're excited about having them in the office and bringing the business people in each month. They're just going to do one show a week type of thing, but we're excited about that and where it's going to lead to. So
that's wonderful. So, question for you.
Oh, okay.
Being in the industry for 20 years, what do you see in the immediate future, in the next year with rates?
I think right now our president's being held hostage by the Fed. The signals are there, but if you listen to all the media channels, they will tell you tariffs, tariffs, tariffs. We're going to have tariff inflation. We are bringing in billions of dollars. I don't know if, Trump, I know he exaggerates sometimes what is true, but there's money being brought in by these tariffs. What caused inflation was us spending money. We're now bringing in money. And they think the tariffs, because it's going to drive up the price of goods, well, that's going to be a form of inflation. Well, I was listening to this one individual, and I'm buying into this thought. Nike, for example, just to use hypothetical numbers, I assume he said it costs them about $10 to make their sneaker over in Thailand or whatever. Well, they come over here and sell it for $120. The reason why they sell it for $120 is because people are willing to pay at an optimal level the $120. So if we go put a tariff on there and it costs them $2 or whatever more a sneaker, or let's say even $10, they're not going to raise that price from 120 to 130 because it's going to then cause the consumer to go, ooh, that price point's a little too high. I need to look at something else. They're still going to sell that sneaker because it's at its optimal sales price that you and I as consumers see as a value at $120. 130, 140, we're like, oh, maybe we go look and see what else is on the shelf. And I truly believe that is the way it is, because we are talking, they like to act like it's all this, we're talking pennies on the dollar for a lot of these goods, and it's not even all the goods. So I really feel we're getting a really negative, talk from the media who are using talking points. And I think our Fed chairman, now we'll find out, maybe he'll prove me wrong, but they don't think he's going to do. They're meeting today and tomorrow that they're not going to do anything. And I think with inflation is down where they want it to be, but they're still not pulling the trigger because they're using the tariffs as excuses. And that's all they are. I think this is an excuse. So that's my 2 cents. Appreciate you coming on.
Yes, thank you so very much.
This may be it for today's episode of Real Estate Excellence, but we both know your pursuit of excellence doesn't stop here. To connect with the best of the best and really take your skills to the next level, join our community by visiting TracyHayesPodcast.com, where you'll meet more like-minded individuals looking to expand their inner circle and their personal experience. That's available at TracyHayesPodcast.com.